Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious today with this wonderful world-renowned artist, Mr. Chris Calle.
Thank you, Mark.
How great to see you, sir.
Thank you. Great to see you. Happy to
Well,
be here.
well, he had a brief appearance at the end of yesterday's show to announce what he was going to be doing today, and we're glad to have Chris here in our Space Coast. If you hear anything in the background, Trekkie Techie's talking to Marty. We've had some technical problems the last 2 days in our studio here, but we'll get them ironed out. We appreciate y'all standing and waiting for us because the show must go on, and we will have a Stay Curious show, even despite a few of our technical difficulties. Pictures are sideways, and we're not getting names up there, but we're happy to have Chris Calle here. We've got a special announcement. Stay curious here at the end of the program. You're going to learn a lot about this wonderful artist who did this beautiful masterpiece. What are we looking at back there?
Gemini 4, Ed White.
That's
Gemini 4
right.
Spacewalk.
And what kind of medium did you use?
Was
It
it
looks so much like a photograph.
No, it was an oil painting, and if you get really close up on it, you can see all the texture of the painting. And it's a big painting. It's probably about 40 by 60.
Mm-hmm. There we've got Chris's name on the bottom. Thank you, Jessica. We had
Hey.
trouble doing that there. And he is a space artist and a postage stamp designer. We're going to show you. He's going to tell us about that. I'm going to
Sure.
try to be quiet here, a lot of it, but we wanted to let you know that we're happy that you want to be partnering with the American Space Museum with the artwork of your legendary father, Paul Calle. And here's a picture of father and son. Whoop, what did I do there? Oh, there you go.
There
Marty.
we go.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Here's your dad.
It's in our studio.
Where's that?
It's in our studio.
Uh-huh.
My dad, the last 35 years or so of his career, he painted the West, the American West, and primarily the mountain men of the fur trade.
Man, and we're going to see one picture of that. You'll need to check that out. Just not a space artist, but very involved with the Western culture. Your father passed away 12 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I understand, but he lived a good old age.
Absolutely.
And
A life well lived.
and my father's passed away too, but their memory lives on in the things they did and taught us on here on our Father's Day coming up.
Absolutely.
So what was the occasion of that picture? Just visiting there?
I think my father needed a portrait for one of the Western art shows he was involved in, and the photographer, or the person who was photographing it, decided to take a few photographs of the two of us together. So it
Cool.
was nice.
And so we're going to hear a lot about his legacy, and we're going to partner with the Calle legacy so that you understand more about these two wonderful artists that have documented America's space age, along with a lot of other illustrators.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking to one of the cream of the crop here when you talk about the Calles, in
Thank
my
you, Mark.
opinion.
Thank you.
There you are recently. You're very active
Yes.
now. Tell us what that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, this was a couple weeks ago at the National Space Society's ISDC conference down in Arlington, Virginia. I was there displaying my artwork and my father's artwork, along with photographer Mark Usiak, who's in the studio today, as well as Michelle Rausch, another space artist, friend of ours.
And point out just above your shoulder, there was a book laying on that table.
Yes, that's a book I wrote called Celebrating Apollo 11. It was a book I wrote in 2019 primarily about my father's artwork, space artwork, and his role in the NASA Fine Art Program. And then we came out with a second edition in 2019.
And we're going to talk in a minute about that NASA Fine Art Program because out of that came this iconic image, your father's postage stamp of the
First man on the moon.
man on the moon there.
It's an iconic, that's an iconic space image. It's an iconic stamp image. And anyone, whether you're a stamp collector or a space collector, or probably neither of them, had seen one of those when it was issued in 1969.
And your birth date is after 69, correct?
No,
No.
I was born in 61.
Oh, see, that's right.
So I was
Okay,
8 years
born
old.
61.
Yep.
Well, everybody's had postage stamps on this. If you're a space geek, maybe you ripped it off and put it on the wall just to look at it there at your workstation. Dad ever talk about developing this image? Did he have any restrictions? Did he have
Sure.
any-
I mean, the restrictions were just size. Back then, maybe it's the same now. Stamp designers would do the final artwork about 5 times the size of a postage stamp. And he created sketches, everything ranging from the lunar module to Neil Armstrong stepping off the moon. Included both astronauts in the sketch, astronauts saluting, which was a theme that shows up later. We'll talk more about that. A peace dove. He was really into back in the late '60s, early '70s, trying to use a peace dove, incorporating that into a design, and actually he actually tried to incorporate that into some Apollo Soyuz patch designs. And I've got a great letter from Deke Slayton saying, Paul, we love your sketches, but we've reviewed it and we're really not that into peace doves at the moment. But if you want to do some more sketches, we'd love to see what you can come up with. So it's kind of funny.
Well, you all your life have been around the space scene because of your father's involvement. Sure. We're going to talk in just a second about some of the neat things your dad pioneered and did. But how was that growing up? You're like an astronaut's kid. Well, in many ways, that these people intertwine with your lives.
Sure. I mean, the space program was a big part of my father's life. He was an illustrator, so he was working on everything from postage stamps to Time magazine covers and Ladies' Home Journal illustrations, and space was a part of that, but a big part. He was one of the early. He was one of the first 8 artists asked to document the end of Mercury, Gordon Cooper's launch, and there were 8 artists, and he covered every mission of Gemini and every mission of Apollo after that. So it was a big part of our lives. But like you said, I mean, I can remember talking to, I think it was Mark Armstrong and with a group of people, and someone asked him, what was it like, being the son of an astronaut? And he said, we didn't really understand that because everybody in our neighborhood was the son of an astronaut, the daughter of an astronaut. Everybody was kind of in the same boat. And if they weren't sons or daughters of an astronaut, they were sons of daughters of somebody working for NASA. So he just kind of took it as that's what my dad was doing. That's how I felt. I mean, he did some really cool stuff, and I knew he was doing some really interesting things, but it was just kind of normal.
Here's a picture I have in there too. Oops, sorry, Marty. That's Michelle Rouse you were talking about.
Yes.
And there's Marco.
There's Marky
over there with the picture at he sold and and you have everybody went crazy over your Earthrise photo there and he also did a starry above Mark's head
actually there, above Mark's
the Van Gogh story.
I took that same image and I incorporated in Photoshop Vincent Van Gogh's Starry Night, and everyone seemed to really gravitate to that at this show and elsewhere. I've gotten some really great comments about that painting.
Well, let's talk about your dad in the aspect of a few old pictures there.
Sure.
As he said, he was part of James Webb said that we don't have any natural sketch artists or painters or watercolor people coming to our launches, and we need that to record this history, not just photographers. And so your dad was one of the first 8 being chosen.
He was
with a man named Hurd, and
it was. I've got a list here. It was my dad, Peter Hurd, Lamar Dodd, John McCoy, Bob McCall, who everyone knows, Mr. Space Artist, Mitch Jameson, and Robert Shore. And I've got a great quote from James Webb in 1962 when he was administrator of NASA. Here's what he said about the inauguration of the space art program, the NASA Space Art Program. Webb stated that important events can be interpreted by artists to give a unique insight into space. And so the whole idea was to get, the visceral response of an artist's impression of the launches, of the suiting up. NASA had cameras set up and photographers to cover every aspect of the development of the rockets and the engineering, but art was not part of that. And I think Webb and another, and a group of people thought that there could be a unique aspect by sending artists down there.
Well, unique is an understatement because some of the most iconic images have not only been photographed like we see Ed White, but then replicated by artists like yourself, interpreted by yourself in there. And so... let's see, I've got tell us about what's going on here with your dad and Neil Armstrong and what that medallion's
I think
about.
that was probably like 1970.
The medallions you wore around your neck.
Not this one. I think my father designed this. I believe this one, the front was Robert Goddard, and the back was Neil Armstrong. It was done, I believe, for Medallic Art, and that might have been the size of the original one, and then they would reduced it to make the final medallions. That was more of a presentation medallion, that big plate size one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm imagining, Armstrong and my father were together at some event celebrating Apollo 11. That's where that was photographed.
That's neat. And I love this picture of your dad.
Yeah.
He's got his sketch pad in his hand.
His
and,
beard. Yeah.
He's just had a beard most of his later on, most of his life after 50 years old or something.
Yeah, probably after towards the end of the Apollo program when everybody was growing beards. My dad did and kept a beard for the rest of his life. But this was down at Kennedy Space at the National Air and Space Museum, and he was sketching with some other astronauts. I think it was before. When it might have been the 5th anniversary of the moon landing celebration down there at the museum.
And there's the lunar module built by Grumman, and one of the lead engineers of that was Marty Winkle, our co-producer here. Marty, big shout out to you. We've had a lot of good guests here. We had Mark Usiak earlier in the week. We did a remote with the two brothers, Tom. Hi, Tom, out there. Know you're watching. But we appreciate all Marty does. He's a volunteer here and just so faithful. We're approaching 600 episodes of Stay Curious.
That's incredible,
Chris. And this is how we found this wonderful artist, was through Stay Curious and other contacts with his friends. And what was your impression when you saw Marty and I fumbling through this thing for the first time?
No, I think it's great. I think because each show is a different aspect of space, and each show can have interest for different people. So I think it's terrific, and just to have done 600 of them so far, that's pretty.
Thank you. And as you've seen and witnessed, it's just a piece of cake to put together.
Oh, absolutely, seamless. Seamless production.
Yeah, it takes me just like that to throw stuff together.
We'll see how my slides come up.
Yeah, right. Wait till the end of the program here. Well, you know that we celebrate space history, astronaut birthdays, and we love our particularly shuttle astronauts, because there's over 300 of them. This is a happy birthday to astronaut Drew Gaffney, 76 years old today, an American doctor that grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Pretty interesting place to grow up, I'll bet. So. He was orbiting the Earth on his 45th birthday on STS-40. Which is orbiting the Earth right now, the first true life science mission. In fact, we showed the crew photo. They're like a MASH unit for their gag photo in there. But Gaffney was a payload specialist. His experience in electroechocardiograms and breathing devices was really made the life science mission a big success. He's a member, of course, of the Institute of Medicine's Committee on Space Biology, and he's worked at Vanderbilt as a professor. Of course, he's 76, so hopefully retired. Continues to do research as a guest professor in Stockholm. So happy 76th birthday to astronaut Drew Gaffney. He was a one-time astronaut, but you're an astronaut forever once you orbit the Earth a few times, right?
You leave your mark.
You leave your mark. And that's a pun, isn't it?
True.
Okay, true.
Leads us to this photograph. My father leaving his mark.
Yes, your father leaving his mark all over Wally Schirra's face. What's all this about? And I love this photo because you don't think of an artist getting into his work like this, okay, literally.
Well, okay, so the truth be told about this photograph, it was, I guess, during Gemini period. I think the New York Times did ads or had something in the magazine. I mean, in the newspaper, and I believe this was a huge enlargement of a drawing my father had done of Wally Schirra. And my father did a whole series during the Gemini program for NASA, and unofficially it was called the Paul Calle's NASA Gemini Sketchbook, and he did probably 25 different drawings of every aspect of the Gemini program, from the suiting up to the recoveries to the launch, and just everything. And the New York Times blew these up probably 10 times the size of the actual drawings, and I think they put them like in Times Square, up like almost like billboards. And I guess afterwards, they asked my father if he wanted them, or the extras or something, and they sent this huge tube of these things, and he rolled them on the floor of the studio. And I believe a New York Times photographer came and photographed him for an article, and they rolled this out, and he pretended like he was drawing that big.
Oh,
So, and
wow.
the drawing wasn't exactly that large.
That's cool. That's cool.
And I really am frustrated because when we moved from that studio, I seem to remember these going in the dumpster. We threw those away. Later on, I was like, that would have been so cool to keep
Well,
those.
you spent a couple days with us, and I've taken you some to our stash spots around here.
Yeah.
And your eyes got pretty big, and
Well, you got a few things. You got a few things
yeah.
to sift through, yeah.
But we appreciate someone like you that appreciates stuff like that. And Karan Conklin, our wonderful executive director, toured you around here
Yep.
a little bit. So,
Terrific museum. Love it.
what was your reaction when you saw your dad's work in our Gemini gallery? The
Oh,
GT,
yeah, you
6?
had actually shown me that before. I can't. That wasn't GT6. So who was that? Which astronauts?
I thought it was Lovell or Borman,
Borman
going
Lovell,
up on
Borman
because
Lovell.
they had the
Right,
big suit,
right,
the weird
right.
looking suits
Borman
on
Lovell.
there.
Yeah,
They
that
had
was
the
a-
soft helmet.
That was a drawing in this whole Gemini sketchbook, in Paul Calle's Gemini sketchbook.
Yeah.
Probably
And
16 by 20.
we're proud
maybe
to
12.
have that here.
Yeah,
I remember when kind of the decision was made, do we put that up or not? And I'm like, that's
Yeah, it's a
piece
print.
of
It's a
art,
print that
we-
NASA must have produced back
yeah,
then.
yeah. So we'll show that because we're gonna show you a lot of Calle art over the next few months as we promote this father and son. Everybody knows their work, but I don't think they all associate your name with it, and
Okay.
and we kind of want to try to fix that a little bit there. But
Wow, that's a blast from
what
the
a
past.
beautiful father-son picture, dad teaching son there.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us about where you at, what's going
So
on
this was, I covered two of the early space shuttles for the NASA Fine Art program that was still in effect by then. And this was, I believe, maybe STS 6 or 8. And I don't know what the badge is on. And Bob McCall also was covering that. Great space artist Bob McCall. And my dad and I were just sketching, the pads or, something down at the Cape, like he always referred to it. And, Yeah, that's a young Chris.
Yeah, they
Calle.
referred to it as the Cape all the time,
Yeah.
didn't they, Marty? That was the real. They never called it KSC. Or
No, it was
whatever.
always my dad going to the Cape.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I mean, how did he tutor your? Yeah, number one, Chris, tell us that you had some formal education.
Sure, I went to University of Michigan.
Where? The University of what?
Go
Big
Blue!
City, hear
Shout
that?
out for Go Blue.
Yeah, that team up north. Go Buckeyes.
Oh, how I hate Ohio State. Oh, did I say that? Did I-
Uh-oh.
Um,
I think we just pulled the plug.
No, so I got a degree in Bachelor of Fine Arts in illustration and graphic design. I wanted a university setting as opposed to maybe like a Pratt Institute, which is a strictly art college. And it was a great experience. But a couple of years afterwards, I got involved in the NASA Fine Art program like my father and covered 2 missions and actually went down for a couple more. So that's where that photograph was from. It was actually a lot of fun. My mom actually came down at the same time, so it was and my dad was kind of reliving, previous years during the Apollo and Gemini missions.
Well, some of us have followed in our father's footsteps, but I'd say many of us haven't. And what was that kind of like for him to see you wanting to, follow what he was doing, and or did he just kind of leave you alone and let you find your own
No,
way?
he didn't leave me alone. During summers from college, I was going to become an illustrator, and he would give me, kind of an illustration assignment, a
really?
specific subject. Yeah, and I kind of just worked through as if it was a real, project to kind of learn the ropes. To get my footing, to get ready for dealing with art directors and magazines and things like that. So that was a really good stepping stone, to prepare me for that. And then right out of college, I got work with Reader's Digest. I did a lot of work with Reader's Digest and other magazines and postage stamp designs and just all the kind of projects that are that illustrators work on, movie posters.
Well, these are all little niches that any illustrator would love to get into,
Sure,
and
absolutely.
obviously, so
Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that I had a foot in the door with my father, but as he always said, and as I would tell anybody, a mentor can get your foot in the door, but you have to make sure that they don't slam your foot, slam the door on your foot, because if you can't produce the work, then it's almost doubly bad for you. Reputation wise.
Well, there you go.
So,
Yeah, it's hard to recommend your son if your son's just kind of mediocre or whatever. But your dad obviously knew you had the chops. And,
Sure. Absolutely.
And I want to show one picture. Mr. Paul Calle is just not a fabulous, iconic space artist, but his Western art, and I'm going to give you a taste of it here, Marty. There we go. Yeah, next one. There we go. There is one of his typical Western art things that he has had galleries in the West. Tell us about that.
Well, I guess in the mid '70s, when he was an illustrator, there were a lot of illustrators who, going back to Frederick Remington, New York illustrators who went out west to do research, fell in love with the West and the art of the West and the Native Americans, and the cowboys and mountain men, and then they would come back east and paint and draw. Their impressions. That goes back to, Beardstadt and, all those guys who went out west and came back east. And Remington was one of those people. And my father, this friend of his, Frank McCarthy, had already bridged the gap between going from illustration to a Western fine art career. Frank had done, book covers and movie posters, and they were really good friends. And I think Frank's son was interested in pencil drawing, and so I called up my father and said, "Hey, my son's interested in pencil drawing. Can we come to the studio?" And it turned out that then Frank and my dad had known each other, but weren't really good, weren't friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the son didn't come. Frank came, and they became lifelong friends. And Frank got my father involved in the Western art experience. And I think my father's first gallery was with Frank's gallery owner. And my father really concentrated early on, after a few years, really immersing himself in the Western painting experience and drawing experience, into the mountain men of the fur trade. He really fell in love with that genre, with those rugged men, who went into the mountains. Many of them probably never came back. Just that kind of interesting lifestyle. And it's really interesting. I wish I had sent you a painting. The last major painting that my father completed was called Down from the High Country. And it was completed in 2009, right before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 3 intrepid explorers at the top of a mountain. And he kind of related it to Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins, the Apollo 11 crew. And this was around the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And same thing, 3 intrepid explorers, on the verge of something, unique in history. And these mountain men were up on the middle of this mountain. And my dad, and we talked about it, and I said, why don't you put, for the 50th anniversary, why don't you put a little moon up in the sky? So he did a little bit of a crescent moon. You could see it, but you can't see it. And so that was his his response to the 50th anniversary. This little subtle image.
You can see what a fabulous. I look at this painting, Chris, and I can't believe the snow. He's just pushing that snow up in front of my face. I have no idea how you paint that.
Well, the interesting thing about this, and you said it about my Gemini painting, it looks like a photograph, and my father always cringed, and I do too, when someone says it looks like a photograph, because it doesn't look like a photograph. The photograph looks like a photograph, and the photograph stands. Photograph's beautiful photograph, but then this is like the interpretation of the photograph of an artist. And my dad always corrected people and said, it doesn't look like a photograph, it's very realistic. So that's the best compliment that an artist, I think, can get, if they're saying your artwork is realistic. But when you zoom in, like I said before, and you get really close, you see all the brush strokes and you see the texture, and it's different. And that was something interesting with my father's paintings. People would say how photographic they were, but the paintings really aren't when you see the originals. But so many people would just see, an image in a magazine or a limited edition print. And because of the technology, in the 70s and 80s, the technology for printmaking couldn't capture all those textures that you're saying that you see in the snow. So it looked more photographic.
Yeah.
And now the technology with Canvas Giclée prints and things, you can capture every texture and every brush stroke. Very interesting, I think.
Giclée, the clear Giclee. That's the buzzword in printing of things there. So
it means sprayed ink. My father
does it mean sprayed ink?
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you for that's a great way to look at these things. That look their interpretive realism of an actual event that happened in space in there. So your dad got involved with postage stamps. Lord knows how that happens. Particularly,
well,
we haven't talked much about the logistics of it, because there's no first day mail and all that stuff going on when your dad's doing this iconic 1966 stamp of Ed White's spacewalk.
Uh,
And what are we looking at there?
1967.
Yeah.
But this is a first day cover where my dad took the first day cover that had nothing else besides the stamps and the cancellation, and he did an original hand drawing of Ed White in space. And the reason he was asked to design the stamp was because of his illustration work and because of his experience at NASA. So the art directors and the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee was aware of his artwork because he was one of the early NASA artists, and his artwork was, like I said, New York Times and NASA and everywhere, Time magazine covers, and they were aware of it. And a space stamp subject was being floated, and so he seemed to be the go-to guy. And throughout the years, the go-to people for decades were to do space stamps was Paul Calle and Bob McCall.
Mm-hmm. And you said they had a friendly rivalry.
They did. I could give a whole talk on, Robert McCall and Paul Calle's friendly rivalry, and it's true. I mean, they were contemporaries, they were friends, but my father designed the iconic 1969 First Man on the Moon stamp. That was something I'm sure any artist, any stamp designer would have loved to do. And Bob did other ones. So it was a friendly rivalry.
He did the rover.
He did the rover, the Apollo 15 moon rover. Yep.
And
they had a friendly rivalry all through their NASA days. And Bob devoted his life to space art. I mean, he is Mr. Space Art. And space art was a huge aspect of my father's career and life, but it was one aspect.
Yeah, his volume of the Western art is just incredible. And I gave you a taste of it.
Sure. And right now there's actually a retrospective of my father's artwork at Scottsdale's Museum of the West in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it truly is a retrospective. It goes from a drawing he did as a 12-year-old, young boy, which is beautiful, to the last unfinished painting that was on the easel when he passed away. And there's actually a recreation of his studio. I sent actually his chair and his easel and paintbrushes, and it's a really terrific exhibit, and it goes through his entire kind of Pratt years, his years at Pratt Institute in New York as college, and then through his illustration career, through stamp designing, through the space art, and then ending with the Western experience.
The name of that museum in Scottsdale, Arizona, which hopefully we've got some Stay Curious watchers. That's outside of Phoenix.
Yep.
So it's called the Southwest?
Scottsdale's Museum of the West.
Okay, Scottsdale Museum of the West. They probably have a website. I'll be checking that out. Marty, we got a comment?
Yeah, Tom Usiak said Paul Calle did amazing sports work that I saw in Tucson.
That's right.
Especially ones of the Baltimore Orioles.
Yep. That was a series I believe
he did sports work, baseball
during his illustration career.
Yeah,
and I believe
training
that might have been for Boys Life magazine. He did Sports Illustrated, Boys Life. Again, as an illustrator, he did whatever jobs kind of came along. Ladies' Home Journal, McCall's Magazine, New York Times. Did a whole series for, I think it was ABC TV shows, like full page New York Times ads, like The Ghost in Mrs. Muir. Remember that the TV show? They did drawings for advertisements. Yeah.
Wow, Marty.
Yeah, Tom corrected himself. He said actually the display was in Scottsdale.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Your brother Mark's in here, and he said he's moving. He'll be sending his key to his storage unit up there for you to sort through what you want, and then send the rest back down here. All right. Actually, like father, like son. Okay. What a great image, and there is your sketch on the stamp that was issued. Tell us about that.
So it's again very similar to my father's Gemini twin first day cover you saw. It was an envelope that did not have any artwork on it other than the stamp and the cancellation. I did an original hand drawing on that. So this is kind of interesting because this wasn't my first stamp design. My first stamp design was in 1984, right out of college. Harry Truman was my first stamp design. But my father designed the 1969 moon landing, and when the 20th anniversary came along, the Postal Service decided to issue a stamp, and the plan was to do a priority mail stamp, and it was going to be it was to be designed for the priority mail envelopes, to be put on the priority mail envelopes, which were red, white, and blue. So they wanted to carry that theme. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. Phone rang, and it was Jack Williams from the Postal Service, who was the art director who who gave us a lot of the assignments. There were a few other art directors, but Jack usually would call. And my dad got the call and answered the phone and started talking to Jack. And, they had a nice little pleasant conversation. And then Jack kind of said, Paul, can I talk to Chris? Sure. Handed me the phone, and then Jack asked me to design this stamp. And after I got off the phone, I told my father jokingly, he said, well, why didn't they ask me? I designed the one, 20 years ago. And I said, that's exactly why, because they wanted that continuity between you designing the original stamp, me designing the 20th anniversary. And then in a display of brilliance by the Postal Service, they asked us to jointly design 2 stamps for the 25th anniversary. So things kind of came full circle.
And I didn't press that. That was the $9 stamp.
There was a $9.95 stamp,
I
and then a
didn't get a copy
29,
of
and then a
that.
29-cent stamp.
Okay. And since we're talking to the stamps here, before we go any further, we're going to talk about some of your dad's friends.
Sure.
I'm fascinated with the logistics of that, but brag about a few of the stamps that your dad's done.
Sure.
But not without revealing us the money involved, but it seems to be kind of lucrative.
No.
And I mean, or is there just a set wage that we pay so much for that?
Yeah, it's
or you
like
negotiated?
No, it's like maybe it's the same now. I don't know. I haven't designed a stamp in a while, but it's just a set fee, just like if you're doing a Time magazine cover or a Reader's Digest, half page, full page, quarter page illustration. It's just a set fee. But the prestige of being, able to design a stamp, the prestige of someone saying that you're a stamp designer, for me has always, been really exciting. My father designed, his favorite stamp design is actually the Robert Frost, poet Robert Frost. It was a beautiful, beautiful pencil drawing of Robert Frost. And he kept, in a number of his sketches, he always wanted on a postage stamp to have this orange sun. He would do like a pencil drawing and then like a watercolor of just an orange sun. And they didn't go for any of those designs for Robert Frost. And he never was able to get them to go for a stamp design that had his orange sun until I designed the Connecticut statehood stamp in, I think, 1988. And it was a scene from Mystic of the Charles Morgan ship that's there. And as part of it, I did an orange sun. So the sun did the sun for the father.
And that reminds me to tell people where you live. We mentioned that yesterday when we did a plug for you, but tell us where you're living now.
I live in Connecticut. I grew up in Connecticut and shared a studio with my dad for a long time.
Did you guys go down to New York a lot on the train to get inspired? Galleries or stuff like that?
Sure. When I was an illustrator, I would go, probably every week. Usually you would, there wasn't FedEx so easily. You'd get on the train, Metro North, and deliver your painting or drawing or illustration
with your big brag book of photos.
Yeah, with your portfolio.
Yeah.
And call a couple other art directors, make the trip, worthwhile. Have a couple things set up.
So your dad did how many American stamps and you yourself?
Sure. I don't know. I can't remember the exact amount, but we each did about 35 postage stamps.
Wow. Yeah. But you did other countries too.
In addition to that, sure. I designed, actually my dad and I jointly designed for the 25th anniversary of the moon, a stamp for Sweden on the moon landing 25th. And the only thing they asked is they didn't care whether it was an astronaut saluting or stepping off the lamb. They just wanted to make sure that the Hasselblad camera was prominently displayed on that stamp.
Oh, really?
And it was.
Huh, that's interesting. Tell us why you're here exactly. I meant to do that at the beginning of the show, and we got a little bit flustered with getting on a little bit late. But you're here for a very, very important thing that you've done many times.
Sure, I'm here to see you and
promote
Stay Curious and the American Space Museum and hang out with my friend Mark Usiak.
We love it. We love it. And we
have been doing all that.
Yeah,
but I'm down here for the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation's Hall of Fame Space Rendezvous Weekend. I'm giving a talk tomorrow morning on space art as part of their programming for the ticket holders of the weekend. And then on Saturday, 3 astronauts are being inducted into the
Sandy Magnus, Ferguson. What's Chris Ferguson?
Yep.
And help me with the third one.
Dave Leastman.
Dave Leastman. Dave Leastman. Yeah.
So it's a whole weekend of kind of interesting and fun events, and I'm really looking forward to giving the talk on space art tomorrow. I've given a similar talk, different places, Space Fest years ago, And this one kind of includes the history of my father, what we talked about, and his role in the NASA Fine Art program, a little bit about stamp designs, our combined designs, as well as the artwork I'm working on now.
And there's some fun along the way. Marky's here
Always.
with you to be a photographer for a cool event tonight. What are they doing?
Well,
as a
most people think Mark Uziak is my official photographer. Are you, Mark?
Absolutely.
There you go.
And I got to see a launch yesterday.
And I got to see a launch yesterday, which was really exciting because that was the first launch I got to see in person since Apollo 17. Oh no, I couldn't say that.
ASTP?
Since the shuttle, but
Okay.
with the exception of the shuttle, the first other launch since Apollo 17.
Yeah, we went over
Exciting.
Spaceview Park
That
and
was
saw
great.
Rocket Hobo Ozzy, and
Yep.
and
It was
a
great.
Big front was coming in. They couldn't believe they got the launch off. It was
Well,
funny
like
as
Mark
could
was
be.
saying, 10 more minutes and they might not
Yeah.
have launch. What was really exciting for me was you saw the rocket and there was clouds up in the sky, and then you could see it go up, 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 and then all of a sudden, poof, it just disappeared in
Yeah.
the clouds.
And then the roar came.
And then the roar
And,
came.
I'm
was
glad
exciting.
you got to enjoy that.
That was fun.
Yeah,
Great
so
time.
the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation
Yep.
was founded by the original Mercury astronauts to provide scholarships for space-oriented education, and I forget how many millions of dollars they've given out. But you've been good to donate some of your artwork for
Sure.
auctions and things like that.
Yeah, the last
And,
few years I've donated. This year I donated a canvas print, as I did last year, of Earthrise, one of my Earthrise paintings.
Mhm.
And then they ask all of the artists in attendance if they'd please, sign the canvas print, and then they raffle it off. You buy raffle tickets, and it's usually really successful, and it's really interesting because this Earthrise, it's lots of lunar surface in the foreground, small Earth rising. It's Apollo 8 Earthrise. And then there's a lot of black image. And when you have 15, 20, 25 signatures in gold or silver in that black, the signatures really pop. It's a beautiful.
We'll have to get a
Beautiful
picture of
piece.
that and
Yeah, I
send
will.
it to
I
us
will.
when they do.
I
We
will.
can share
I
that
will.
on Stay Curious. There's some fun tonight, though. What's going to happen? Astronauts love to have fun.
So tonight there is at Zarella's.
At where?
At Zarella's restaurant. There's
Oh, never heard of it.
Are we promoting them? Sure.
Sorry, John. I want you on the show. Okay,
Oh.
here, but no. John Zarella, CNN reporter. His son Mike, is it? Runs one of the more popular. Well, they're all popular, Cape Canaveral, but yeah, we ate there last night.
Yeah, we
and,
did. Had a great time.
But
And
they're having
tonight-
bartending.
So the astronaut cocktail challenge. Last year there were 2 astronauts. I think there's 2. I mean, last year there was 3. I think tonight there's 2. I'm not sure who they are, and they mix a special space themed drink, and people vote and decide which cocktail is the best. So it's fun. It's a fun experience.
Big fun. It's for a good cause, the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and they've been partners with the American Space Museum over the years in there. But let's get back to talking about your dad, and then we're going to show everybody a little surprise we have in store with you and your father's art.
So-
Who's he here with?
Well, Alan Bean.
If people don't,
So-
if you don't know, then
And why are you turning in?
yeah, why are you tuning in? Exactly.
So that's Apollo 12 artist Alan Bean. I think later in life he would have probably wanted to be referred more as an artist. As an astronaut.
and a hell of an artist.
So Alan, my dad, were really great friends. Going back from pre-Apollo 12, and I think Alan probably gravitated to my dad because he was an artist, and Alan wanted to be an artist and became an artist, obviously. And just I've talked to Leslie Bean a number of times about stories that I never heard, about Alan and my dad and her at different events and things.
Leslie Bean.
Leslie Bean, his wife.
Okay.
And she's just filled me
people didn't
in.
know.
She's just filled me in on things I never heard about. But this was at Space Fest one year. My dad, I think, went to the first 3 or 4 Space Fests. We gave a talk. And Alan Bean obviously was there, signing autographs, promoting his art. So great guy. And I got an interesting story about Alan. So when I did that Gemini 4 spacewalk piece, Jim McDivitt had given me 3 small pieces of silver that flew on Gemini 4. And he gave me one for each of my kids and one for me and my wife. And I decided when I was working on this painting that wouldn't it be kind of cool, a la Alan Bean, if I scraped off some of the silver from, scrape out little silver shavings and mixed it into Ed White's spacesuit and his umbilical cord. And so I started that painting, and I was mixing those in, and I decided, hey, I'm going to call Alan. I'm going to tell him, what I'm doing. My father had passed away before this, but I would see Alan at Space Fest, and I would call him every once in a while, and he called my dad a lot, for advice, for advice on painting and drawing. And there's a great inscription in one of his books, saying I call Paul when I'm interested in finding something about something complicated I'm drawing or trying to figure out. It's really a sweet comment. Anyway, so I called him and I said, hey, Alan, I don't want to steal your thunder. And I know this is, you mix things into your paint, and I think that's really, great and really interesting. And I told him the story about Jim giving me these pieces of silver, and he just said, in that southern twang, Chris, that's just, wonderful. Somebody's got to carry on this, tradition of doing things like this. And, I'm not going to be around here forever. And that person's you. And that was really sweet. And today I still I still get the emotional thinking.
Yeah,
I was
going to say. I said, I know you had a moment with Al Bean. I was going to get out of the mic. Here.
So he kind of
Al Bean passing the torch to this gentleman here.
Thanks. And that was about a month or two before he passed away. So it was really significant and really sweet. And Leslie told me that afterwards, he got off the phone, and they started talking, and they're talking about me and my father, and it was really sweet. Alan was a great guy.
That's and you have carried the torch. You're gonna his new artwork that he's doing.
Yeah.
That's one problem we had today is we got one sideways that we're gonna show.
Yeah. So I did this,
but I'll make it up by showing some tomorrow. But you segued into something very artistic and different that we'll talk about here in a moment.
Well, more about putting kind of things into my artwork. I just finished another Earthrise painting for a client, for a collector who I'll see tonight probably. And it was an Earthrise, and I decided to mix in there something from each Apollo mission. So I mixed in some of that Kapton foil from Apollo 11.
Marty's got a bunch of that.
The unflown that when they swapped out that squib valve. And a friend of mine, Andre, gave me meteorite shavings, lunar meteorite shavings, dust and shavings. And so I mixed some of the shavings that kind of look like small pieces of pencil when you manually sharpen a pencil, and I mixed those in the paint, and you could see them like they look like little pieces of metal. So I mixed that in, and I have a little piece of fabric from Apollo 13 and moon tree dust from one of the moon trees that Stu Russo brought back for Apollo 14. And
Wait. They took trees to the moon?
No, they took seeds and then planted the trees. And that's a whole different story.
Okay.
There's actually, if you Google Chris Calle touched by the moon, there's an article in Collect Space, and there's a news story about that painting I did mixing the moon tree sawdust and a woman who was inspired by the painting and inspired by my artwork and Alan Bean's artwork, and she wrote a song about it.
Really?
Which is pretty cool. You can
Collect Space. One of our friends, Robert Zimmerman. I love
Robert Perlman.
Robert.
Yeah.
You know who Robert Zimmerman is?
Oh, you're gonna tell
Bob Dylan.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What do you mean, really?
I didn't know that.
That's Bob Dylan's
I didn't
name.
know
Robert Zimmerman. Yeah.
So
Robert Perlman, thank you. We share your work on Space, Collect Space a lot. He usually has some neat out-of-the-box stories on there that's out of the mainstream.
Great stuff.
You do a good job.
Big shout out to Robert Perlman.
Robert Perlman. He used to be a board member with us, and love to have him in this chair someday.
So anyway, I'm incorporating some flown material. Anyway, my friend Andre also gave me the dust, and so after I was done with the painting and incorporating these little pieces of some of the missions, I have a screw from Apollo 17. I cut up a little piece off and put that in there, and from each of the missions basically. And then the dust of the meteorite dust, I almost felt like I was a chef. I put the painting flat on the easel, and I just kind of dusted a little bit in some of the darker areas so that when you look at it, it kind of shimmers. And I thought that was interesting. And then I did a little more. And I was just waiting when the paint dried. I was waiting if I turned it back this way and kind of hit it on the table, whether all that dust would fall off. But much of it stayed in. And I even included a detail in the upper right-hand corner. I took one of my father's Man on the Moon postage stamps. and I affixed it onto the canvas and then painted over it, but you can still see the perforations. I'll have to take a close look at that image. And actually,
and this was what painting again?
This
the
latest
Earthrise?
Earthrise, I
Yeah.
call it Earth Shine.
For your a client in
For
there.
a client, and I included one of my dad's stamps in that, as well as all these pieces of Kapton foil and everything. And a good friend of Mark and mine, Conroy Padilla, he does some really incredible art, and he did a piece of Alan Bean where he included some of my dad's stamps underneath the surface, and you can kind of see the shape of them. So
Yeah, you see the
you
perforation.
can see the
laying up there,
perforation.
yeah.
So I got that idea from him.
What an interesting technique there. Let's have another great historical story here about, yeah, go ahead, Marty, the next one. The next astronaut artist there,
yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Michael Collins. We're talking to Chris Calle, by the way, who is a renowned space artist here on the Space Coast for the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Hall of Fame Celebration Weekend. And that is his father, renowned Paul Calle, with, of course, Apollo 11's Michael Collins, who passed away about a year ago at age 90.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an artist of himself. That's his art behind him there.
Yeah.
So tell us about this.
Well,
Chris.
again, my dad and Mike were really good friends. Mike, I think, preferred painting fish than painting, spaceships and things. And actually, I had the opportunity with
He liked wearing fish too.
yeah,
that
yeah,
shirt
yeah,
there.
yeah. My son and my son Ian and our friend Steve Worth had an opportunity to go fishing with Mike one time, and he was just content to be sitting on that boat fishing.
Really?
Nobody caught any fish the entire day except my son, but he was just completely content. But this was taken at, I believe Mark Usiak took this photograph at Space Fest in San Diego. And I remember this. This also has a little Alan Bean story to it, because Mike, I think, only signed on like Friday. He wasn't going to sign on Saturday or something like that during the autograph part of it. And at one point, Mike and my dad were just on Friday late in the afternoon. We're just kind of in the back where Mike's paintings and drawings and prints, and all the art was kind of displayed, but there was nobody around him. They were just chatting, and so I went over and I started talking to them, and after about 15 or 20 minutes of them just talking about art, just two guys talking about art, Alan Bean came around the corner and he was like, I was wondering where the real artists were. It was so funny, and I think it was Mike or my dad said, come on, join us.
Well, it would be a fly on the wall sometimes with these, and
Yeah.
and that is fun about being around astronauts.
Sure.
is when they're not talking about being an astronaut.
Yeah.
Well,
Mike and another really interesting, fun story about Mike is Mike and my father actually got to know each other early in Gemini because Mike was also at the ceremony for the Gemini twin space stamp. When it was issued,
Oh,
he was
okay.
the astronaut representative of NASA.
Oh,
So,
all right.
and my dad told me that they're sitting up on the the dais,
Yeah.
and before the ceremony, and my dad said, Mike, I've always been curious when you did your spacewalk, how did it feel, you were so cramped, and then you opening that door and being out and out in space. And Mike said, oh, it was liberating, it was just wonderful. But when you're painting, Paul, do you mix your paint on the palette or on the canvas? And my father was like taken aback because he didn't realize that Mike was painting as well. And here, again, my dad was interested in this aspect of this guy's life, and he was interested in something else other than the space experience. And the same thing happened when my father was the only artist covering the Apollo 11 crew during this breakfast and the suiting up for Apollo 11.
We're going to talk about that in a minute here.
Okay, and well, let me just jump ahead real quick. And Mike, while my dad's sketching, at first he had the mask on and the little hat, and because of germs and everything. And Mike kept eating, my dad said, and looked up and finally said, "Paul, is that you over there? That mask?" My dad's like, "Yeah, Mike," because at the ceremony, Mike said, "Hey, we should get lunch sometime together." And my dad said, "Yeah, Mike, it's me. You said we could get lunch sometime together, but this is breakfast, but that's the same." And Mike got up from the briefing with Deke and eating, got up to come and look through my dad's sketches. Here he is going
Really?
to the
Getting
moon,
ready to be suited up.
going to the moon in an hour, and he's interested enough in artwork to come over and look at that. I thought that was fascinating.
But we'll pick up on that
Yeah,
story
sorry.
here in a
Sorry, I
minute
jumped
when we
ahead.
show you what. No, we're doing good to keep it together there. There's you again with your work.
The
There's
display,
that Van Gogh
yeah.
rendition in the back there.
Yeah.
Who are some of your artists that influenced you? That people would know about, like the.
Well, I don't know how many people would know. Obviously, my father, Bob McCall, certainly in space. But really, probably the two people who influenced me the most are two people maybe people don't know so much about. Peter Beard was a photographer, and a lot of African imagery, but he would create these journals, drawings, photographs, painting on top of them in journal after journal after journal after journal. And I just got fascinated with those in college, Peter Beard. And then the other person who inspired me during my illustration career, I was working on it was like pre-Photoshop. And so I was incorporating a lot of photographs like on top of my drawings, gluing them basically on, and using I would print on a copier on like a plastic clear sheet and overlay things like pre-Photoshop. But there was an artist during the 60s, Robert Rauschenberg. He was a part of the NASA Fine Art program for Apollo 11, Rauschenberg, for Apollo 11, and for a few launches after that. And, he's in the same realm as Andy Warhol and Jasper Johns, in the history of art. But his work really inspired me. And when we were at the T-shirt place today, I love those screen printing, and Rauschenberg would do printing, like screen printing and lithography, and layer these images that way. Because again, pre-Photoshop, but his images were always really inspiring to me, because it would be photographic images as well as he would paint and draw and throw things on them and affix things on top of it. And so that his work really inspired me to what I'm doing now. With kind of combining.
We were talking a lot about that today.
Yeah, and I didn't mention Rauschenberg, but kind of combining digital with painting and drawing and collage and assemblage.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have a beautiful family.
Yeah, well, that's a long time ago.
And this is just not a regular family party. We've got Grandpa.
Sure.
In there. Tell us where this is, what's going on.
Yeah.
Your two children there.
Yeah.
This is a while ago, because they're older.
Yeah, that was probably my wife Jacqueline and my daughter Ariana and my son Ian. This was taken on the stairs at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, leading up to the room that houses the Saturn V. And the Rocket Center asked my dad if they could enlarge his painting, another kind of iconic painting of Saturn V, Power to Go. It was his response to the launch of Apollo 8. That extreme awesome power of that Saturn V, and they enlarged this to basically 2 stories. As you walk up those stairs, it's really it's an awesome painting at the size that it is, 48.
Here is 60. That painting.
That's actually Power. That's actually the
Power.
Atlas. That's
actually the wrong one.
That's actually the Atlas rocket.
Right.
He did the Atlas rocket first, obviously, for Mercury, and then Power to Go.
Boat tail on there, and there's the Atlas, kind of similar images, but
similar feeling.
Yeah, as an artist, you're just like everybody's focused on the whole rocket and so forth, and here, I mean, you can feel the power.
Yep.
Right there.
Yep.
And so we have partnered with Chris Calle. Not only to honor him, but his father. And this is why we were at a T-shirt place today, because starting Friday, tomorrow, everybody out there, we're going to offer 3 T-shirts of the Calle's artwork. And here's the first 3 T-shirts.
Cool.
Tell us about it there. I'll let you talk.
Well, that's my dad's Power to Go. The awesome power of the Saturn V, and on the back, you got the title, and
we're gonna diminish the back a little bit. This is the first proof, and we're gonna have the words on the back of the shirt be a little bit different. Paul and Chris's autographs are in the front there.
Well,
we're finding out the price of these, and we'll get it out to you there hopefully tomorrow. But we're gonna do a little Calle campaign here to dress you up in some new T-shirts. We're going to offer a women's T-shirt also, and we really have been talking to Chris about doing this maybe 3 times a year, 3 shirts. So we'll have a fall selection with some long sleeve for all you Michiganders. up there to go to the big house and watch the Buckeyes beat you.
Okay.
Again, yeah, uh-huh. Cut. So
Well,
when we built this relationship, Chris, and finally met each other, and you're excited about that.
absolutely. I'm thrilled, that my artwork, my father's artwork, can help the American Space Museum. Happy to, have you guys use, whatever you can to broaden your, outreach and get more people interested in your museum and in space in general. So if my artwork and my father's artwork can do that, I'm absolutely thrilled to happy to let you do that.
We're so appreciative of it, and like I said, we're bringing the knowledge of you and your dad along with us, as well as other artists. We want to we will have programs on Mr. Robert McCall and some of these other great artists that have interpreted our amazing space age like none other. Well, the third T-shirt is based on this iconic image that we've been showing. I mean, the second one. Here's the second T-shirt.
Yeah, we talked about that already.
Gemini
4
Spacewalk.
Yeah.
Is another. That's the front and the back. Again, the type's going to be a little smaller, about underneath the collar, and we're getting that revised.
And there's my working title for this was not Gemini F4 Spacewalk. It was, when I finished the painting, I brought it to Jim McDivitt, and he actually signed the painting. And before he signed it, he looked at it, he loved it, and we put it out on the big table because it's a really big painting. And he said, "That was my view." And I said, "That's my unofficial title, my view." And so he actually wrote on the original painting, "My view, Jim McDivitt."
Well, we could change it to that.
No.
Now wait a minute.
Oh boy.
Hello, Jim McDivitt. Can I come over and bring you a painting? I mean, how does that work
Well,
out,
because
Chris Calle?
I told you, he sent me gave me those pieces of silver.
Yeah,
I told him I was going to work on painting, and I think it was after one of the space fests, because he lives in Tucson, and I told him I finished the painting and said, "Hey, I want to show it to you." I
Yeah.
think that was a year he wasn't at Space Fest.
Well, Jim McDivitt is 92 years old. Just turned 92, and to me, one of the unsung heroes of the whole program. Why didn't he go on to Apollo? Because he became the manager of the Apollo program. Such was his management and intelligence at the time, that he was better suited there than to be an astronaut. So I'll talk more Jim McDivitt.
He did go on to Apollo.
He did go on Apollo 9. Yes, Marty, thank you. I mean, as a moonwalker to go to the moon. But yes, he one of the most important missions of all, testing Marty's LM number 3. And in Earth orbit, and I mean, it was a fabulous mission there with David Scott and
Schweikert.
Yeah, Schweikert on there. So
my phone's blowing up. People want to order those shirts.
really, people want to order the shirts already. Well, here we think's going to be the best seller, and it's based on this image of your father's artwork. And here's the T-shirt. But I'm going to go to the image. It's called, we're going to call it Neil Armstrong Suiting Up. And for those of you that don't know, this is a story recreated in the movie First Man. About
true.
Neil Armstrong.
True.
Tell us about that.
So, a long story, but I'll give you the short version. Universal Pictures, Damien Chazelle was directing First Man, starring Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong, based on the book by James Hansen. And I got a call from Universal. I got an email first from Universal saying, "We want to use your father's artwork in the movie. We just, would love the family's, approval. You agree to that?" And I said, I sent the email back. "Absolutely. That's, fantastic. That's really exciting. My dad was a big part of the program. So you have my permission for sure. And just, let me know what artwork you need. I could get you, images and stuff." And I assumed it had something to do with the suiting up or the breakfast. And so then the next day I get another email saying, I'm misquoted. The producers are interested in hiring an actor to play Paul Calle during the breakfast. And while your father was a public figure at the time, being an artist, working for NASA for this project, we don't really need your permission, but we don't need the permission. We'd like your, approval for it. And thought that was just really cool. And so I got off the phone and I talked to my wife and I said, this is really, really cool. They're doing this. And I said, I got to call Rick Armstrong, who I'm friends with, and Neil's son. And I called Rick, and Rick said that yes, a historian had told them that there was an artist in the, in the suiting up and during the breakfast and during the walkout. And we kind of Rick joked, hey, they should use you. You're an artist. They should use you. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. That's like really cool. And then Rick said, if you want, I'll send that up the chain, where I know, to just let them know that you'd be willing to do that. And I said, that'd be great. In the meantime, I responded to the email and told the guy some of the stories I've told you. And I said, if Universal Pictures, wants to hire an actor to play Paul Calle, why not use someone who knows everything about Paul Calle, who's an artist like Paul Calle, who can sketch like Paul Calle, and who has the sketchbook and pens that Paul Calle used in 1969 during the Apollo 11 breakfast and suiting up, I can be in Atlanta anytime you need me for filming.
Yeah.
And so the guy called me right back a couple hours later and said, if you're serious, I'll ask the producers or director or whatever, and came back, a couple days later saying, yeah, they would love you to do this. Damien Chazelle thinks it's an amazing idea. And he's really into putting historically accurate things and these little Easter eggs, and he just thought it was a great idea. So I was like, absolutely, let me know, where and when, and I'm on board. So I play my father in the movie First Man during the breakfast scene, sketching Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong, using the same pens and sketchbooks that my father did in 1969. So very surreal, what is that? Art imitating life.
Yeah.
So really a kind of
an unbelievable story.
Yeah,
how it all
great.
lays out there.
It's just
And we're in there for about 3 seconds.
No, gosh, I
gotta go back and see it.
Oh,
again.
it's like you're talking like 15, 18 seconds.
Oh, really?
Because it
Okay.
shows my hand sketching. You have to go back and look. And at the
I
premiere,
will.
I said to Damien Chazelle, I said to Ryan Gosling, yeah, so I really I was the focus of that scene, and he's like, yeah, you were, because through the whole scene there's no speaking, and I think they wanted to show kind of that tense before the launch kind of quiet, except the only thing you hear is my sketching. So I think it's a really interesting.
No, I've known that, and I haven't been able to. We've got the movie. I haven't looked it up.
Oh, God. Wow.
Oh well, we had a premiere for that movie with 10 Grummies
Cool.
that Marty got together his Grumman crowd,
All right.
and we actually had a big event with that. Talking about the First Man movie about Neil Armstrong. What did you think about that movie in general?
I mean, I love the movie because of my
Yeah.
father. I play my father in
Yeah.
it. I thought it was a great movie. I think it's a Hollywood movie. I don't many people said, is this accurate? Is that not accurate? And I think that it's the story about Neil Armstrong. It's not the
And the family.
It's and it's about the toll that it takes, that it takes a toll, being, doing extraordinary things. It's about an ordinary man doing extraordinary things. And I think that's what the takeaway from the movie is. This is a biography. This is a historical, it's not a documentary. It's
Right.
a story. It's a
Right.
story of a man.
Yeah, Chris, I tell people even in docent talks, it's a lot like a Hallmark movie that emphasizes the family and the human
Sure. It's
drama.
the human aspect.
Neil Armstrong saw 4 of his friends die,
Yep.
3 of them in X-15 crashes, and then Ed White,
Mhm.
and
then Elliot Bassett and
Bassett and C
yeah.
killed
Yep.
in plane crash. The prime crew of Gemini 9, and I mean, and then this man had the responsibility of being the first man on the moon. I mean,
Yeah.
did you ever get to meet Neil and talk to him in
Sure.
an informal setting?
Yeah, actually, a couple times when I was older, but the image that's going to be on the T-shirt of Neil Armstrong suiting up was produced into a limited edition print by the National Air and Space Museum when Mike Collins actually was director there, and it was the sales of the print were to benefit the Lindbergh Foundation, which Neil Armstrong was probably like co-president or something, and And so 1,000 prints were made, and my dad and Neil Armstrong signed the prints. So it's one of those, iconic images of Neil Armstrong that's definitely signed by him. And I was the one who went down with my dad, and when Neil Armstrong signed the print, I took with my white gloves and I handed it to my father to sign. So there's some really cool pictures of me at the basement of the Air and Space Museum with all these prints. And we took a break for lunch. And that was right when the IMAX theater was first beginning. And I can't remember the name of the movie. This must have been like towards the end of the 70s, late 70s maybe. And maybe To Be Free to Fly or To Fly. And so we were going to go up and see it. And they had saved a whole row for us. And it was already packed and the movie was about to start, and we ushered in. It was Jim Dean, who was the NASA art director at the time, my father, Mike Collins, me, and Neil Armstrong. That was the order who moved in. So I'm sandwiched between Armstrong and Collins. Or no, maybe my dad was next to me and Collins was next to my dad and Jim Dean. And that movie starts, and I seem to remember the Earth rises, I believe. And I turned to Neil Armstrong and I said, "Does that look familiar?" And then I caught my father out of the corner of my eye, and he just like was horrible that would ask him that.
Don't embarrass me, kid.
And he just like looked at me and just gave that little.
Uh-huh.
It was really cool. I remember that.
That's interesting.
My dad looked at me like,
You got a whole lot of memories, my friend.
I got some great
Chris Calle.
memories.
You are a very interesting man. He's a delightful person to be around.
Thank you.
He even bought lunch. So what can I say about that? We're ending our little conversation here with Chris Calle. Glad that you joined us. Again, sorry we were late, but those T-shirts again, we're going to be selling. We'll have it on all our social media. Calm down. We'll get you the price. We're going to pre-order. We're going to have a woman's T-shirt that you'll be able to buy also, ladies. And because that women's tee will look great with this Power to Go on it there. So, and like I was tickled that you said that your family can't wait to wear more new Paul Calle or Calle T-shirts.
Absolutely.
Tell us your website.
www.callyspaceart.com. I'm in the middle of redeveloping it, so there's going to be a new look in a few weeks.
There you are with the two UCF
Wow,
brothers
look at
and
that.
your dad, just
Fab
to show
four
that,
there.
how you all are bonded together.
All those young guys.
And,
Wow.
and bring us together here. It's
Wow.
amazing there. And
That was at the first Space Fest in Phoenix.
Okay. What year had that been?
2007.
2007, I guess. Mark Usiak will know. So.
Yeah.
We just done it. We got to sit at
Well,
your
we're
table.
grateful.
Yeah,
that-
yeah, and the USIAC boys sat at our table. I didn't know them, we didn't know them, and it was just luck of the draw that they were
I don't
seated
know
with
why
us.
those and here's the picture that messed up. Unfortunately,
They're
this,
like
this is your latest. Tell us what's going on there, and then
So-
we'll show this again tomorrow. When
Sure.
we've had a technical problem. We tried for. That's why we're late trying to fix this photo.
So this is what I alluded to earlier, kind of my interpretation of a Robert Rauschenberg-esque type of imagery, where you're combining painting with historical aspects of an event. So this is the Artemis rocket that is sitting up out on the pad right now. And you can see that I've got the Mercury 7 in there. I've got Neil Armstrong in there. I've got Ed White, the boot print for the moon boot print. And it's sort of like I call it a montage painting. And I've been doing a lot of these lately. I've actually done 4 or 5 for each of the Apollo 50th anniversary galas. So I'm working on Apollo 17 now. I displayed 6 of them at San Diego Air and Space Museum about a month ago during the gala there. But it's, like I said, it's kind of combining photo, drawing, painting on canvas. And it's really exciting for me because I'm able to, it's very creative and very inspiring to me, very liberating to work in this kind of medium that nobody's really kind of working.
And very hard, I'll put together to balance things and make it not just a bunch of stuff thrown in seen there. And
And the exciting thing is with Photoshop, I do some with Photoshop. With Photoshop, you can layer things, and there's little details when I gave you some details. You
Yeah.
can put those on,
Yeah, well-
another time. But you blow up certain areas of this, and there's little details. And one of the little Easter eggs that I keep hiding in almost all of these is my father's stationery was his thumbprint. That was kind of the logo on the top of his stationery.
Huh.
So in each of these paintings is the thumbprint of my father.
That's
Sometimes
cool.
you can really see it. Sometimes it's completely, hidden.
Being a pencil artist a lot, I could see that your fingers would get covered up, and he'd have thumbprints on things. Was that kind of where that came from?
I don't know. I don't know if that's what
that
it
would
was.
be. He didn't have a criminal record, so
Not that we know of.
not if we know it. But yeah, we apologize. We couldn't get this straightened out. You're in the room, but you see the moon lower left, and you go across there. There's our Mercury astronauts. That the destination was the moon.
Just turn your computer.
Yeah, Tom Usiak is. He's got it turned around up there and there.
Good.
Check it out there. So we got some great friends that have been watching us, including Michigander Larry Pusker up there, Dave Stange, Ophelia Saltero. She's watching in Normandy, France. We know
Wow.
that
Okay.
Robert Law is probably wondering if we're going to ship those shirts to England. I mean, no, he's in Scotland. I'm sorry there. And we will with the postage is right for you there, Robert Law. Carlton Bailey has just come in
right.
from feeding the squirrels, and he's
And the raccoon. No, the raccoon's not yet.
out there. Thank you, Cynthia Rossi. She's a great Stay
Mm-hmm.
Curious fan. Cynthia, look forward to meeting you. John Tilko.
John
Thank
Tilko,
you.
all right.
You know
Hey,
John?
Yeah, I do know John. Yeah.
Cool. Where's he live?
Actually, he lived up in Massachusetts, and John and Mark were also down for the First Man premiere down at the Air
Oh.
and Space Museum. Yeah.
Brad McKinnon, Keith Sewell, thank you for watching. Pamela
Brad.
Shivix, a friend of mine from Lorain, Ohio.
Okay.
She's big into solar astronomy, showing people that. And Christopher Mick is outreach coordinator in Madison, Wisconsin.
Great.
And Christopher, congratulations. I saw something about you I meant to pull off. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. He's one of our daily Stay Curious watchers, and he's doing some more things in STEAM in the state of Wisconsin, and I'll share that with us all tomorrow. So, Marty, thank you for running the board today. Chris, what a delightful show.
Thank you.
Everybody around the museum is impressed with just impressed with you generally as an artist and a good person,
Thank
and
you.
one that we are looking forward to embracing as our nonprofit needs A-list people like you for us to
thanks.
reach out
Thanks.
and
Happy to help out.
And we have got some other plans to promote art with Chris Calle, and we'll talk about those as times come along and some
Absolutely.
of our events that we're planning here at the American Space Museum. Chris, is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to share with our listeners out there? or-
Gosh, I think we pretty much covered everything.
What can you say about our little humble museum?
I love
here?
the museum. It's got some amazing artifacts. It's a terrific museum. What more is there to say? Yeah, everybody come to the American Space Museum.
Yep. You can't believe what's in here when you look on the outside, can you? You look on the
No,
outside and you go, gee.
Yeah.
And that's maybe a good thing because we don't want anyone breaking in and stealing everything. But, well, gang, we appreciate you being out there today. And we want to just mention that if you want to give money to the American Space Museum, you can give with confidence, as we got a 95 out of 100 rating from Charity Navigator, a institution that monitors nonprofits at no charge to us. We didn't even know they were doing this, and we got a 95 out of 100 as a
impressive.
secure and a place that you can donate those tax deductible dollars to support our education programs and our outreach here. So, Marty, anything else going on?
Nope.
All right. Well, we thank everyone for being out there today. Tomorrow's Friday. We're looking forward to having Triple T on the show and talk about Tales from the White Room, as well as we'll show you some more corrected images of your art in there, and report on whether these boys the good time they had with the astronauts tonight on there.
Sounds like a plan.
Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's very informative and just such a joy to share this artwork. This artwork turns me on. I mean,
All right.
what any other way to say it?
I'm happy to share.
This is some real important history that you guys are preserving here.
Always
So-
happy to share Cali space art and space art in general.
All right.
So.
And you can check that out on CaliSpaceArt.com. And please come back tomorrow to what? Bridge the space between us.